Welcome. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this very timely conversation with the Economic Times. My name is Ashutosh Sinha, and over the next 90 minutes or so, we'll be talking about the changing workforce management dynamics. And today's focus is very importantly, the automobile sector. Given the changes that are being seen in this sector in the last few years, it could well see even more changes over the next decade or so. So it is definitely something to look forward to for everyone. The Economic Times and UKG present Changing Workforce Management Dynamics in the Auto Industry. I have my colleague Nasrin Sultana joining me as well. Good afternoon, Nasrin.
Good afternoon, Ashu. It's an industry that has wheeled the global manufacturing sector over the last 100 years, and it will continue to do so. We have seen how the pandemic has changed the face of manufacturing industry, and one of the leader sector of the entire manufacturing industry was auto, definitely, because as we know, all our food, all requirements, essential medicines, vaccines were wheeled out of the factories through the auto industries, and the automobile sector actually helped to keep the industry running. Now, if you look at the face of the industry, that is completely changing in the next few years, as you mentioned. Manufacturing operations have undergone a sea change thanks to the move towards EVs, or the electrical vehicles, that we have been talking about and of course reading the newspapers every day. And we want to know from our panelists how the pandemic has made the workforce more mobile, adding that extra layer of complexity to the operations. A part of the talent that the automobile industry works with is slowly turning redundant because of the fundamental changes sweeping the sector.
Yes, Nasrin, point well taken. And that's also one of the challenges that the industry has to handle. The broader issue that also needs it, that of course needs attention, and we should be talking about it as well. Yesterday, at the peak of the pandemic, it was about managing the workforce that was available. Remember those days?
Yeah.
And in the new normal, for automobile companies, one of the critical issues is also about being agile. That is very important, and also managing the workforce and ensuring that it is in sync with the resources and the demand in the market. The auto demand lately, you would have noticed that it's been going up and down. It's not a secular growth trajectory that you see. So since not all workers are in the office each day, how can each of their scheduling be made more efficient? Again, that's one of the challenges. The workplace is hybrid, adding to the challenges for the plant manager, and it's as true of automobile companies as of manufacturing companies. In addition, the plant manager must manage workers who are remote, who are working from different locations, and managing their skills and sometimes even the employment type. Again, that employment type is very important for the automobile industry. So the complexity in a stream only multiplies.
Definitely, I agree to that. And just to add some more complexity layers to that, Ashu, all of what you said must be done while the workers' health status must be monitored, while the company also keeps an eye on the uncertainties, because as we know, the virus could be ebbing now, but it's not gone out of the woods. We are not out of it completely. There are still precautions taken on the shop floor and even at the manufacturing unit. Just to add some more points to it, that the enterprise-wide systems could help run the plants, the workforce needs a fresh push. For different companies, the return to office plants could be dependent on some of the input that will come from the situation on the shop floor, the leaders of the shop floor, how they take calls on the workforce management, which shift takes over, what kind of talent is required, and how do you manage that talent and to optimally use that talent, because as we know, not the skills vary, and of course different kinds of skills are required to manage the equilibrium of the shop floor. Now, going on, while all of this has been happening, the learning and development for the organization as a whole must continue, Ashu.
L&D, that's so important in the reskilling for the employees, in the way the employees can be managed as well, because their skills ultimately, as we spoke, need to be managed as well. So as we welcome and introduce the experts who will be joining us for the conversation, and before we go to that, just a small reminder, please do post your questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll try and take some of those questions to the experts so that your questions get the attention and some of the issues that you raise with the industry can be addressed by the experts. So today we are joined by Kavita Kulkarni, CHRO at Varroc Engineering, Ruchika Pal, Group Head Corporate HR, Apollo Tyres, Rajiv Kapoor, ED and CEO, Group HRM at Minda Group, and Nasrin. Who else are we joined by?
We are also joined by Sudipta Marjit. He's the head HR at Tata AutoComp. And lastly, Sumeet Doshi, Senior Director and Country Manager, India UKG.
Okay, so that's an interesting, thank you so much everyone for being a part of this conversation. The sector, the automobile sector, is seeing quite a bit of changes in the last 2 years, particularly factors which are looking ahead and factors which are legacy to it. So Sudipta, my question to you is, as you gear up for normal work schedule, how have things changed for the sector? The big picture is what I request you to share with us. And how are you planning and executing the broad production activities at the company?
Thank you so much, Ashutosh and Nasrin, for those wonderful introductions. And I thank, first of all, Economic Times for organizing this webinar, which is so topical. Look, the way to look at it, which I feel is, what is a real paradigm shift? The real paradigm shift is the way we are making automotive and we are going to use automotive is changing. You know, and there's a change. Usually this comes once in a century or more. There sometimes the use changes or the making or the production type change, but this is together, the both of the things are changing. You know, and I won't call it only electric vehicles. This whole phenomenon is of alternate fuels, you know, and it is very much linked to the sustainability of, you know, the paradigm which is happening of the world. And what is happening in this is human resource takes a center stage, because the success of the organizations, the new age organizations, will be defined by the skill. It is, I sometimes say that in India, in automotive, we are going to see what happened in India with the IT revolution around 25 years back, because the kind of skill you will have, this kind of skill you're going to nurture, the kind of skill you're going to attract will define your business and position yourself in the marketplace. So that's one of the paradigms. The second paradigm is very interesting, that while there is so much of discussions on growth, you know, just to give a figure, that in the year 2017, globally we produced 92 million vehicles, but we have not reached that again back in 2022. We went down to 73 million in 2020, and we are just knocking 85. So there is going to be, while there will be growth, there will be very much uncertainty in the global automotive industry and also in India. It will not be, historically the uncertainty was always from the demand side, that there is a demand. Automotive industry is known by cyclicity, so you have to do a lot of things around that. But it is interesting kind of uncertainty which we are all seeing from the supply chain. From the supply chain, because of technology, which we know as the semiconductor crisis, global uncertainties. We are talking about various kinds of uncertainties. the pandemic and the other aftermaths. The last week, in the media was all about the monkeypox, and things like that, and the various uncertainties. So it will not be a straight line curve of growth, but there'll be a growth which is much more than the industry has seen globally or in India. So the whole thing, and the other thing, the last thing I want to talk about, the paradigm which you wanted to understand, Ashutosh, is that this automotive industry, which is defined by the tier 1 and the OEMs, where used to get talent or lose talent in one kind of a singular direction. One of the OEMs would lose from another OEM, and the tier 1 companies will lose talent. But now you have to attract talent, and you may lose talent to industries which you never thought about. It may be electronics, it can be consumer, it can be various startups. So these are the 4 paradigms which I think is going to redefine the way we look at workforce management in automotive.
Right. Kavita, if I can come to you, of course, now no conversation is complete without talking about the pandemic. And 2 years, of course, has been a learning experience for all of us in different sectors. But post-pandemic, as we are gearing up for a new future, the conversation has moved from productivity versus engagement with the workers. So can you please share some details about that change where we are talking about from productivity to engagement with the workers?
Right. Firstly, thanks for having me. I just to carry on from where Sudipta left. When I look at, when you say what are the mega trends, especially for us in the auto industry, it is most definitely the chip shortage as well as the EV production. On one hand, you have this newfound digital fluency that is helping people to solve more problems. So everybody, right from the security guard to people in, say, consulting, don't just use mobile phones, but there is technology that is evolving all around us. And the shelf life of this technology is extremely limited. Now comes board level agendas, and board level agendas include digitization as well as technology enhancement. Gone are the days when you had to push and influence the board for any kind of capex spends. You get them very easily after the pandemic and even during the pandemic. Our products, especially Varroc, which is a tier 1 auto component supplier, we see deep technology getting into all of our products. And products, again, changing because of EV. Now, hence, there is greater need to hire folks with technology from IT, from all backgrounds, as Sudipta was mentioning, across plants, across functions, corporate functions, including R&D. Now, the pandemic, going back to the question you asked, so you have all this technology changing, digital improvements, the board, focusing on digitization and technology enhancements. On the other side, you have the pandemic. That has induced changes in terms of remote working. You have the gig workers, you have competition that has increased as far as hiring is concerned. Everybody is sitting on more than one offer. And that has made traditional models of working obsolete. So what is it that we are doing? Of course, like all companies, we are adapting to this rapidly evolving, work environment. We are preparing for this duality of employee needs on one hand, customer needs, as well as the changes to technology. Now, if I have to just talk of 3 things for me as an organization, how is it that we have faced post-pandemic world in terms of engagement? First is the employee value proposition. The earlier, say the last decade, the employee value proposition was all about work-life balance. The employee value proposition would definitely have some amount of compensation. But I think the EVP for most organizations after the pandemic is individual learning opportunities, technical expertise, internal movements within the organization for various roles, as well as financial rewards, which kind of continue. So that's one piece on how you market your organization. In order to have enhanced employee experiences, there's been a lot of digital enhancements, whether it is LMS, whether it is LXPs. The investment in learning online certifications has seen a massive jump. And third, we have at Varroc a comprehensive talent management framework. In fact, over the last 2 years, we've been able to enhance our talent management framework to reflect the needs of the future, creating roles that were never there before, as an example. So we are a role-based organization, and we've also tagged the skills, the competencies for each of these roles, which are transparently available to all employees to see. So that gives, at Varroc, we can promise you one thing, that you will own your career. Career movements, career growth, that is something that we have enabled and continue to do so.
Right. So at this point in the conversation, Rajiv, if I can come to you, companies are also talking about production and trying to sync it with the preferences that the employees are asking for. Something what Kavita also mentioned. So how is the regular work schedule adjusting to the emerging situation now?
Okay. So when let's say again, I'll start from the pandemic because that's something very important. And that really changed the paradigm for all of us.
Yeah.
I think when it hit manufacturing and especially the AutoComp sector, we're very happy to say that we were very quick to swing into action.
Yeah.
Manufacturing traditionally is not, they don't follow those very modern, I would say, work techniques and all, but with 48 to 72 hours, everything fell into place. The work from home scenarios, even the high-tech people who were using designing the equipment and software, they were online, and things were absolutely working as per plan. So kudos to the resilience of the manufacturing teams. Things actually fell into place very, very fast, and we never skipped a beat. So that is now continuing. If you look at post-pandemic, not that we are actually out of it, but still times are still better now. So we are now trying to integrate and institutionalize these into our policies now. I'm sure everybody else is also doing the same. But these were alien to our types of industries, but now I think people have tasted this, and everybody now knows that this works, even for manufacturing. Of course, there are functions on the shop floor related kind of work which you cannot, but I think mostly hybrid kind of working is going to be coming into the manufacturing sector. As we speak, we are also looking at it. We are looking at policies around it. And it is like Kavita mentioned, it's easier now to get a buy-in from the senior leadership team because they themselves have positively experienced this entire change process. So this is something which is now going to stay as a part of manufacturing. So while pandemic was bad, but I think this change which has been brought in into the manufacturing sector is here to stay, and it's a good thing. This provides flexibility, helps us get better talent, because the Gen Z, which is now wanting to get into jobs, and let me tell you, manufacturing was never their first choice, still is not. But if we are able to give them certain better flexible work-related policies and structures around that, definitely we would be able to attract better talent into our kind of organizations. And things are changing. Even let me now take you a step lower. If you look at the workforce management, the people on the shop floor, the world has changed for them also. While they're constantly working, the digitization has really brought about a huge amount of requirement for change in their lives also. And their adaptability was a they were so quick to adapt, and like we were managing the entire workforce during the lockdown period through mobile apps. Everybody was connected. We knew everybody who was where and what's the health status. So I think all of us have gone through that, and that adaptability of that workforce was stupendous. It was great, and now we are now making sure that these are institutionalized and they are normal ways of working now. So a huge amount of change has happened, and the good thing is that it is here to stay, and the manufacturing is also riding this way.
Okay, some of your points are very well taken, particularly in the context of the way the group is growing and spreading its wings. And I do have some idea of what's happening, so I can now put things in place there, Rajiv. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about the mega trends. So Ruchika, how's the automobile sector navigating through the mega trends and planning the workforce management to drive better productivity? And interestingly, because I asked that because the context, and it was raised by Sudipta, the industry is also losing talent to industries which were never thought of. So there needs to be some sort of an inward looking approach as well.
Thanks so much to ET for inviting me, and great points made already by my panelists. I think when I look at the mega trends, first of all, all of us are part of the auto ancillary industry. So, we have huge reliance on the OEMs, and OEMs are hugely impacted by world trends per se. And of course, we all have our own replacement markets. While my panelists are talking of EV and the likes, tire industry is not yet impacted directly by EV. So, for us, three key things which stays. One is you can't make a tire at home for sure. So, I'm sure most of my panelists also agree because you're part of the ancillary industry. Second is we are really talking and hearing a lot about, the gig economy and flexibility. Deep inside, we all know we all have our own challenges. It's tough to convince because we also have multi-generational workforce. Sometimes it was tough to get them used to what was in the pandemic. But now when it's coming back to work, everybody's saying, I want to see you, I want to talk to you face to face. So, again, the hybrid is also sometimes a challenge that we are operating in. Now, just zooming back to the first part of your question, Ashutosh, which you said, some of the mega trends. I think this industry definitely is impacted a lot by economic changes. Like, for example, tire industry, when the Chinese tires were stopped, it helped us. And that is an economic, input that works in our favor. On how we see really the Chinese dumping of tires. So that was a favor, that was a good thing that worked in our direction. Infrastructurally, yes, like, the whole, since we are not purely reliant on OEMs, but also the replacement market, the infrastructure plays a very big role in the tire industry. And so it is a very important trend for us. Then, of course, right now, the automation of manufacturing, robotics have entered this industry, the blockchain. And very important piece for us is the environment, the rubber, that is a major component. How can we go into the green tire industry, or how can we make it more environment friendly? Disposal of tire itself is a big aspect for us, So there's a lot of things which are happening in this industry as well as thereby impacting the auto sector. And the biggest piece, of course, is supply chain. Like, I think Sudipta also talked about, the increased raw material competition, geopolitical impact of supplies that we are all facing. Kavita spoke about chips. We are talking about raw materials, like simple things like chemicals coming from China or the rubber itself. So I think all of this is playing a big impact on our costing. So while my bigger point to this industry is, while we are talking of a lot of mega trends, our own ability and profitability is hugely impacted by the cost of what we see getting into our raw material and production. And this is also impacting our own capacity to OPEX and CAPEX as well. I'm sure all of us are facing that challenge that, how do we squeeze it tighter? How do we pass the cost of increasing raw material to our end customer? OEMs will have only that much margin, whereas our, replacement market may have slightly different margins. But these are all some of the very grassroots level issues as much as the mega trends impacting our industry in an ongoing basis. And then on the other side, we are, of course, placed with the whole thing of attracting talent, a talent value proposition, when we are looking at the great resignation, which has truly impacted our industry. And when we talk of workforce strategies, I think it's also about the right sizing. Because over a period of time, by legacy, some of the companies have also become slightly oversized. We have attracted a lot of talent. We have built a little bit of fat in the system, if I can call it like that. And thus the right sizing is very important, because that also is an important factor. Having the right, I think Kavita spoke about right talent management strategies, because we are also challenged by losing talent at a time when we can't show them a career path right till the top, but that mid-level is vanishing, which is becoming a big aspect of worry for us, because that is the talent which we were grooming to move into senior management. And there's a void which is coming in between, because that piece is missing right now. And it's getting attracted by all types of industries. I think Sudipta mentioned we're losing talent to all industries, not just, I can't say it's just tire, I can't say it's just OEM, I can't say it's just manufacturing. It's going to all, especially it's extremely fungible. I think one of the biggest HR challenge in workforce strategy management for us is cost management. What is our need to pay versus capacity to pay? Kavita spoke about, financials are important. This sector is not known to be the best paymaster. How do we attract talent? How do we again balance it with our own profitability? Top line, bottom line, everything works well. Employee is not interested in listening to that. Employee is saying, show me my increment, show me my percentage growth, show me the money that's coming in my hand. I have 3 offers with 40%. I've had people who've joined teams, took a 30% hike with us, 6 months, took 40% hike, moved forward. What is the affordability? It all goes for a toss. So very, workforce strategy is a nice term, but it fails when we can't even retain the talent. My manager is not interested in listening to that conversation. But I think the biggest piece which I'm looking at as a trend in this sector is really getting the right agility. And when I talk about right agility, it's also HR's ability and nimbleness to be able to come to action in a very fast manner. It's also, being able to give that flexibility and resilience. And at the end, I think how to make our sector a strong talent magnet, which it is not right now. And we'll be fooling ourselves if we think we are the best talent magnet available. So I think this is overall, as I see, so workforce strategy, the term will be very fancy, but grassroots, a lot of things need to be done in this sector.
Okay, as you just scratch the surface, some of those things also come out. So I can so relate to what you're talking about. Sumeet, the broader issues have been raised, the points have been kept. Now, I want to ask you about 2 things. How can the smarter companies manage the workforce through this period of uncertainty, transition, and since we're talking the automobile sector, this very interesting transition period? And second, what happens to companies and how do they learn to manage the new roles that are coming up?
Sure. Thanks, Ashutosh, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with all the leaders. So I think I wanted to start off with a particular research that was done by a Nobel laureate many years back. I know India is not at that point, but in various ways we are probably at what he called it as a Lewis turning point. Okay, so what Lewis turning point is all about is it is that point in the economy when the manufacturing absorbs all the surplus rural labor. We all know that we are far from that. But when it comes to skilled labor, we seem to be at a point where we don't have enough, and there are multiple industries fighting for it, right? And what that does, by the way, what that clearly does is it raises the costs of that workforce, which is exactly what Ruchika, for example, mentioned, the increase in salaries. I mean, Ruchika talked 30 to 70%. I have seen 400% also in IT industry. But that's another matter. But the point is, I think that there is this significant challenge that we are seeing around the right skill availability, right? So organizations need to take enough efforts in attracting the right talent, which I think everyone talked about. But when it's not just about attracting the right talent, as I keep saying this in a lot of places, once you have attracted the right talent, deploying them at the right place at the right time is also critical, right? So so if you look at some of the parameters that are driving organizations, and especially with the Gen Z workforce, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's blue collared, whether it's contract, whether it's white collared, you have Gen Z everywhere. You have the new age workforce everywhere, and there are a few things that drive them. And which I think organizations need to, and I think many of my fellow panelists have spoken about it. One, clearly having the right training, development, growth plans, no doubt about it, right? The second is, I think Kavita mentioned about it, which was about work-life balance. But when you look at work-life balance for a blue-collar employee, for example, what does that mean? For a contract employee, what does that mean? And I think this is where companies need to start looking at a little more. For example, can you give them more flexible schedules? Traditional view of shift schedules has been ABC shift that goes into a rotation plan, and you are on it for a month, quarter, or a year. And very rarely you kind of go and make some adjustments. what, for example, I may just throw this out here. What, for example, these are digitally native guys running with smartphones. What, for example, you could give them a smartphone access saying, these are the shifts for next month. Please go ahead and pick up the shifts that you want to. Of course, based on skills and availability and stuff like that. The moment you start doing that, maybe in a very small way for a set of employees, imagine the impact you probably have on their on how they think that the company is taking care of them, and then the work-life balance itself. So that's the other area. Digital nativity goes without saying, right? I mean, if you look at Gen Z, right to the lowest level workforce in an organization, they are using Instagram, watching TikToks every other day. So the ability to be, and then maybe for a blue collar or a contract employee, what is the information that he really needs to see on a day-to-day basis? Maybe what is the overtime I'm going to get at the end of the month? Maybe what is my leave balance? When can I apply for leave? What is my shift schedule? Stuff like that, right? Really, my pay, stuff like that. But does he have that information on his fingertips? We have it. All of us have that information, our kind of information on our fingertips. Does he have that information on his fingertips? I think the moment you give it to him, he is ready to lap it up, right? So I think these are some of the areas where, for a variety of reasons, I think organizations are already beginning to look at this, both from a supply side as well as a demand side, right? There is shortage of workforce, and hence you need to, the existing workforce that you have, you need to retain, which means you need to engage them more. And you need to engage them more, not just with money. Not all of us have 70 to 400% money to give, right? So we can't engage them only with money, but there are so many other things that you can do to engage. So that's the one side of the story. The other side of the story is people are demanding this. You've got to give it to these employees, to these new age employees, right? And which not only, by the way, the nice happy outcome out of all of this is also it helps you drive your productivity better. I'll give you a very simple example that I've discussed with a lot of auto industry customers, is that the shift start productivity loss, right? When the shift starts, you need to change your manning from the previous shift to the new shift. Typically, the information visibility to the shop floor manager tends to be more manual. So there is a manual check around who was supposed to come and who has not come in, what is the gap, and how do I find a replacement, which means that manning period takes about 30 minutes, 40 minutes in many cases. What if I can get real-time visibility through digitization and bring that down to say 5 minutes and 10 minutes? You with the same set of employees, you're beginning to produce more, right? So with the same amount of digitization, you're trying to drive more engagement. You're possibly trying to retain them better, but you're also driving more productivity. So I firmly believe that employee engagement and productivity are not opposite sides of the coin. They go hand in hand, right? And a happier employee, more productive. We all know that, but then there are so many other nuances to it, as you can probably imagine. So I think these are some thoughts at this point of what I had.
Right, Sumeet, thanks a lot. I mean, that's really some of the changes I'm sure our panelists are listening to, and some very interesting, changes that can be brought. And maybe there could be a work-life balance, as everybody wants that, even if you are in the shop floor in the auto sector, or maybe in other, part of the manufacturing sector. I think we saw Rajiv raising his hand. Rajiv, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just wanted to add another perspective, what Kavita mentioned about the EVP, and then Ruchika talked about the hiring strategies, because these are new paradigms which have come into play. Another thing which I personally have witnessed in our organization at least is a shift in the leadership model. That also is something which is very important to be aware of. What we saw, I think the command and control style of leadership is no longer valid. It doesn't work anywhere. So what we observed during the pandemic, the way things happened, we saw a lot of empowered leadership. We saw a lot of shared model of leadership. We saw a lot of delegated model of leadership. And these are here to stay. And this is what engaged people, because what we are trying to do is we are trying to create owners from employees. They need to own what they're doing in the organization. So I think the level of engagement, when you move an employee from just an employee to an owner, taking ownership of what that employee is responsible for, this leadership style, I think, has brought in that change. And very happy to say that we are witnessing a huge high in engagement, because we are let's say, going ahead with these models of leadership. Newfound models, but very, very empowering, and people are really loving it.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that flavor.
Sure.
Okay. So just half an hour into the conversation, I get flooded with questions, Ashu. Maybe we should start, taking them. But before that, I can see Sudipta raising his hand.
Okay, I think I'll just extend to what Sumeet and Ruchika was mentioning. I think very interesting points that while there's a paradigm of the industry, there's an interesting paradigm of the human resource that we are in a time frame where actually most of our organizations, of course our organizations, you're facing in real sense multi-generation challenge. So we were analyzing in my company, we have 5 generations coexisting, and to manage each aspect, manage expectations, manage engagements. This traditional way of policies, has to be really thought through and needs to be thought through. And because if you have digital, you don't have to print, you can really customize. I mean, I was having an interaction with some of my young employees, and they don't have any attraction for product as a reward. It is more of an experience as a reward. But should you shift it to completely to experience, maybe our generation won't like it. The second thing is, I think again, what Sumeet mentioned, I really endorse Sumeet. The thing is that every level of the organization, from a person in the shop floor, a trainee engineer, to your CEO. In the weekend, in the evenings, you're exposed to the best of the apps in your phone. You're using WhatsApp, you're using Zomato and things like that. You cannot come back in the morning and say, okay, you are in the shop floor, so notebook mein aap ye likh dijiye, kind of a thing. You have to give them the customer grade experience. So digital is not a delight factor. Digital is a ticket to play. And this managing multi-generation experience with this whole digital experience and giving the balance, I think is one of the key factors to manage and get the right kind of talent.
Okay, Maya, several interesting issues now coming to the fore, and let's move on to the next question then. And let me take this question to Kavita. Kavita, every company also has a broadly defined diversity of skills that its employees have, that universe that you can find within the company. How's the issue of diversity of skills being addressed for the industry, the automobile industry, in current times?
Well, loaded question. So Ashu,
okay. Point taken.
Every organization has roles. Each role has its skill and its competency. And by the way, no longer is compensation only paid for the role. There'll be multiple people in a role, but you actually pay compensation for the skills and the competencies. It's an interplay between skills and competencies that define his compensation. Now, in all of that, you have some set skills for the ICE engine, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, and suddenly comes a new product altogether, which is the EV the EV two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, and within those you have various products. So a car has various products in order to make the end product, which is the EV car. And each of these products require a certain technology to be able to mold it to fit into an EV environment. Now, when it all started, we thought, we could just reverse engineer and get a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, open it up, and then try and see how it works. And these are the kind of skills that we want. So we went ahead hiring folks. When you hire folks, it's a band-aid solution, just like Ruchika was mentioning. You go ahead and you pay exorbitant rates. You get them in, but then you need to see the output. And the output, especially if the person is in R&D, will take very long. He has to work on the product. You have to have a prototype. And then at the end of it, the customer nods his head and then begins the production. Now you have skills, you think that you need validation, you may need electrical electronics, you might need advanced technology, advanced engineering, power electronics, etc. And then there were times when we even sat down and realized that there were skills that you didn't know the name of, but when you interviewed people, you were like, yeah, okay, that's the skill that is required. So we've reached a stage where we know the skills. We've also run a few surveys, but what is important for workforce management, which is the topic, is to capture it. Now you speak to the individual and you say, okay, these are your skills, because he gives you a CV and you end up believing that he has all of these skills. You assess him during the interview and he comes on board. But how do you know, if you say power electronics, and within power electronics, you have multiple sub-skills, and within the sub-skills, you have scenarios, so on and so forth. You need a mentor to be able to guide you to say, this person has this large skill. Within this large skill, he has this sub-skill, and he has to improve on this particular competency. So he's L0 on this one, L2 on this one, so on and so forth. We've all done it in manufacturing for workers. Maybe a decade ago, we had this L0, L1, L2, L3, and we said, okay, if he can do the job independently, then he is L4 worker. But now we are also doing it for people in the R&D division, which is where the moolah actually lies. So capturing that, Microsoft Excel comes up tops. We've been using that to capture this information, and then having a mentor to assess and to say, yes, we certify that this individual has this particular skill. But it doesn't end there. That's the start. This information has to be available to the individual to say, okay, this is where I am. But if I have to be enthused to work in your organization, can someone please talk to me and tell me, how is it that I will grow in this company and be motivated and be involved in my job? But will I learn a new skill in that same pillar, or will I move to the next adjacent skill that is available? And will somebody mentor me? Now, in our organization, or in the AutoComp organization, most of it is learning on the job. There is very few that's available in the market today. So you can have conversations. You can have a lot of these tie-ups with education institutions, and you can say, we will take your lab for a period of 6 hours on Saturday, and we want a team of your best engineers, and we will work with them to develop something which is new age. You do all of that. At the end of the year, you're able to hire some of the best, whether it is, your MTech or your BTech or CDAC, or even from ARAI certified folks, so on and so forth. But capturing the skills, assessing these skills, and then sitting down with the individual to say, you've learned this, very good. And now this is the next that you have to go. And don't worry, we are here to motivate you. Not only that, you have to tie up with a lot of vendors to get material, to get the base information, or to get the basics of this particular skill. There was a time when there weren't any vendors. 3 years ago, you try and do a search, vendors available for EV technology, none. Today, there are many, but then you assess them, there are today. And
perhaps that means the Google indexing has improved, is it?
You get them here, but not to the detailing that is actually required. So then you're like, okay, you're competing with, the top 10 in the EV space, and we are all fighting for talent, and the same people moving all across, they get their jumps. So definitely it is a candidate's market out there, but just giving them this increase is a band-aid solution. Reskilling, upskilling, improving the digital learning, which is online, etc., will definitely put you into a bubble that will safeguard you from competition. So it is, reskilling, upskilling, there's no alternative. It is just a given.
Right. Everyone talks about skilling. Skilling itself does not solve the problem. A combination of skill, availability of the productivity, and the preference play a big role in driving the productivity. I want to, come to Ruchika and, understand what is your thought on that.
So I think, Les, like you rightly said, like Kavita rightly said, upskilling, reskilling is the need of the hour. But not every skill that we need is something that can be upskilled or reskilled in the company itself. So I think as an organization, auto sector is going through a lot of digitization wave. And under that we are also realizing there are a lot of skills that are not available with us at all. We need to really we cannot build them. We have to either buy them or borrow them, So I think as talent management strategy, the key thing or the three cornerstones for all of us are really what can we build, which will be built on reskilling, upskilling, etc. What will we have to buy? So many digital skills we don't have. Robotics is not available in the company. Machine learning, not everything is available in the company. We're all talking of industry 4.0 and there's so much happening in industrial wave that not everything is available in the company. While a lot of upskilling is also happening based on our own acquisition of capex and the machinery, and then learning that technology with the vendors, etc. So a lot is happening in that space, but more important is going to be really building will be based on really, like Kavita said, so much content is now available. And while she spoke about R&D, I'll speak about my own IT organization. We are making two big tech hubs, one in London, one in India. And what we are doing there is really getting our people with our partner of e-learning. There is so much digital content available on all types of, certifications, etc. We are doing the skills benchmarking on IT. All the new people, existing people, everybody, there's a huge workforce of nearly 80, 90 IT, sitting in the organization. We're doing the skills benchmarking. The system itself will tell us this is the skill level for you. This is the journey that you need to take for the next skill level. And the skill journey is also called out in the course content there itself. And that is put as a KPI for that employee. So, there is ownership of self-learning. The company is ready to build on your skills, but there's ownership. So when I said build, yes, this is a good form of building talent in-house, reskilling, upskilling them and giving them that benchmarking and letting them grow in that journey with the content available itself. And then the partner of our e-learning platform is then going to test them and equip them to do the certifications, which could be multiple available, related to infrastructure, networks, etc., etc. And the technology is huge. So that's happening. When I talk of buy, there's so much of skills and talent which is not necessarily available in the company, which is future looking. And auto sector will have to open its arms to a lot of that talent right now. Simple thing, if I talk about us, is cloud technology. We have been on-prem or most of our stuff or related to IT, but cloud technology is absolutely new. Upskilling alone will not help us. We will have to go and look at buying that talent, which means we will have to have a differentiated strategy. I think one piece which this sector is slowly opening up to and still very shallow and narrow, if I can use the terms, is borrowing talent, which means how open are we to gig industry? We've been saying contract workforce, contract manufacturing in the shop floor, but the non-shop floor, which is our corporate sector, which is our fungible jobs in the, sitting in head offices, corporate offices, how open are we to gig? And as HR, how good are we in integrating that gig workforce? I think my biggest challenge as HR today is telling my managers, my heads of functions, be open to borrowing talent. Not everything has to be my fixed cost always. Can I bring that variability in my cost by going in the borrowing of talent, bringing that? And today I can say, in our 11 functions, we have gig workforce, which gives me great, support to say we bring them on contract, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contracts. They deliver. Simple thing like digitization itself is so well supported by gig workforce. My HR technology enablement is based on a piece which has to be brought in the system and delivered. After this, it's just operation. I don't need a permanent headcount because I'm not an IT company. My SAP configuration guys don't have to be permanent because I'm not an IT company. I'm not going to put them on bench and then on project after project. So how good are we in opening ourselves to borrowing talent? And thus, I'm really looking at these three strategies of building, buying, as well as borrowing. And this sector has to do a lot of job in borrowing talent. Gig is a good fancy word, not really absorbed and enabled in this sector so well.
Okay. Gig workers more for something which is very traditional. Now that sounds interesting. Sudipta, companies can manage only the people part of the resources that they have at their disposal, because that's where the input can be really controlled. You can't control it with the other input, the machinery or the materials that come, cost of raw materials and all that. With the severe crunch in resource availability, how best can that be squeezed, or how best can that be used?
Yeah, I think Ashutosh is a wonderful point. I think some of the things has been spoken, but what I would like to add is it's again going back to the mega trends which we started with. In most of the areas, especially in the new technologies, ready-made workforce will not be available. We have to start believing that. You know, you can't just you can always go and find a lot of CVs out there which will say what you need, what Kavita was also talking about. But you know, so one of the things which happens is you have to really screen the right kind of people and talent. Second is we have to believe that most of this talent we have to actually build. So one of the things which we did in Tata AutoComp, I mean, you know, we have a huge amount of business in EV components, both from the battery side and the motor side and charger side. Is we built and invested in a cadre called Infinity, just to give it the name that that they can go anywhere kind of a thing and any size. That we actually invested in the with the universities and colleges. Tata's also have that. We have global internship program because some of the talent has to be even from outside, and really co-working with the universities and creating a curriculum. We tried to, it's successful in one or two, to basically, I think, again, sorry for using that word again, there's a lot of learnings which an IT industry in India, which is a success story in the world, did 25 years ago, co-creating talent with the academia much before they join you, and getting the right kind of skills. So that's the kind of investment which is required. And I, of course, agree to the other part of what Ruchika said. The other extreme of talent, which can really do innovation. I faced a very interesting challenge. They said that, hey, I really want to work with you, but I really don't want to work with you full time. You know, I mean, and the expectations is very important. That if we create something, who owns the patent? You know, would you like to? Are we as HR traditionally comfortable with these kind of conversations where an employee says that I want to work part time for you because you don't need me full time, you know, and I can do many other things and I can innovate. So I think that is the kind of stuff. And the other thing is, you know, the cultural integration. You know, this is very, very important because many of us, I think all of us in the panel, we represent auto industries, which we are not startups. So there is a huge success story of traditional, you know, manufacturing components, and then you build in the EV and alternate fuel and things like that. So you have to, you cannot brush away the fact that, you know, the kind of skills which you have, how do you want to upscale? So it's a mix of upscaling. It's about attracting the right talent in terms of any environment which they're okay. They want to work for two years. They on a contract. They want to earn part-time with you as a, you know, it's a startup ecosystem, and these are things we have to try. Even in R&D, we have to be comfortable with gig workers and forget about even in support systems, and constantly upscaling and reskilling. So a mix of this can actually give you a maybe a magic number of combination, which Ashutosh you were looking at in terms of the optimum workforce size and the optimum workforce costs.
Sumeet, I want to come to you. You've been patiently listening to all the comments made by the HR who are actually dealing with the real workforce and managing them. So there is a degree of fad about entrepreneurs and running their own business. Of course, they're attracting talent from other industries with very compelling offers. What, according to you, is the challenge in engaging with the right set of people so that they see a career path in the industry?
Right. So I think there are a lot of factors that are driving the current situation. So one of them, as you rightly mentioned, is definitely the startup economy. It is a very hot startup economy in India. In fact, I think India is the third hottest, if I may use the word, hottest startup economy in the world, right? So yes, I think, and that's great for the economy. There is how should I put it, temporary turbulence because of that. And that temporary turbulence in various ways, all of us see. And one of the reasons why I think the panel talked about talent being cross-industry now than ever before. It's because of this variety of businesses that are coming up because of the new age technologies, right? I mean, there are so many tech companies out there who want great mechanical engineers, for example, or what have you, right? So that is that's going to remain. At least for some time. I can't put my finger on when it will go back to a very stable environment, etc. And I think it's only good for the overall economy for something like this to remain. But at the same time, as we individual businesses, we could have some challenges around retention. You cannot retain, as we discussed, all the employees at potentially the costs or the compensation that they might be looking at. But I think it then really boils down back to some of the points that the panel myself spoke about some time back. It's about the initiatives that you take really to drive a lot of things around creating a better career path for those employees. Not all of them want to look at a career path, maybe making the place just so much more trustworthy, right? So much more open, so much more transparent. These are some areas where digitization plays a very big role, and that companies understand. So that's the reason there is a huge focus these days on bringing in more and more digitization, so that you can reach out to your very last employee. I mean, we are talking of look at all the panelists here, and I mean, just count the number of employees that they have in each one of their organizations. They're very, very large organizations, right? 20, 30, 40,000, I don't know how many people each one, right? So when you look at so many people with so many plants, and auto components, interestingly, if we were to specifically focus on auto component, unlike an OEM, auto component has this added complexity of having 20, 30, 50 plants, right? Because they've got to be closer to an OEM and variety of other reasons, which means you have so much more diverse a workforce in terms of locations itself. How do you run initiatives to retain them? The farther you are, the more difficult it is to really reach out to them, which is again where digitization plays a very big role, right? Sudipta talked about it, consumer grade access to employees. I think it's at times it sounds trivial in the sense that it's just about giving an app to an employee, right? Think about it, right? It sounds so trivial, but it actually makes a big difference, because the way the industry is going, when he has his friends in, say, some other industry where that guy has everything on a mobile app, and gets what he wants when he wants, he would want to expect that in his job as well, right? And that makes a significant engagement difference in terms of how you take care of your employees. So while the digital natives, the Gen Z, are driving it, but again, as Sudipta mentioned, we are talking of multi-generational workforce in many of our organizations, especially manufacturing, and it's just the benefit that percolates down to everyone. I've seen cases where I've seen customers with multiple plants, and there's an interesting example I have where there was a customer who had one plant where the average age, I think, was 28 or something, and there was another plant where the average age was some 55 or something, coming from an acquisition and stuff like that. Now that kind of challenges exist. Now the very same solution that was rolled out across the group places had a very different change management behavior, very different acceptance behavior. So which is expected. It's something that we need to plow through, put our foot down, carrot, stick, what have you, but make it happen. It only is for the betterment of the whole company in terms of better employee retention, better engagement, and better company outcomes. I think the other discussion that has happened significantly, and Ruchika has brought that point out, is the cost impact as well. I mean, when we talk to a lot of manufacturing customers, there was a time when customers used to say, yeah, we are what, 5% of the overall cost. Workforce cost is about 5% of the overall cost. So a small impact here and there really does not matter. There are big ticket items for us to handle, but that's probably changing now, right? The focus on workforce cost will increase, and if there is an increase in the focus on workforce cost, there will be an increased focus on how do you optimize your workforce. Today, if something can be done by 20 people, can those 20 people do X plus Y rather than just X, right? That will happen, which is where you need to start looking at more optimization mechanisms. I think Kavita talked about R&D, where the same logic applies. I mean, if you have a much better ability to manage your skills of your employees and their preferences, I think that brings me to the other point, which is preferences around. There are many times, and I don't know if the panelists agree with me or not, there are many times where a person has a certain skill, but he does not want to work in that field. He has a preference to do something else, right? And if you know that as well, not just the skill, but if you know the preference as well, and you actually are able to take care of his preference, if not 100% of the time, some percentage of the time, you're doing that little bit extra for him or her to really retain in the organization. So yes, the dynamics are many, but these are some thoughts that I've seen working with many manufacturing organizations. And of course, applies to our industry also. I come from the IT side. In various ways, the same thing applies with some nuances.
Sure, sure. Let's ask Rajiv. Rajiv, because so many companies in India which are very large and have very pronounced global ambitions, including yours as well. So for these auto ancillary companies like yours, what is the approach to managing the skills in the current environment, given that several companies are also trying to go global? And I'm trying to or suggest if you could give a wider answer, not specific to your company, if possible.
Yeah, sure. No, I think great question, Ashu. And yes, we are looking at we are already a global organization. We have outside. So how we look at competency, because we have acquired certain organizations outside with a very specific skill sets where we don't have those technology with us. That's the reason we have acquired those organizations. So we are now cross-pollinating the people so that we understand and we learn those techniques and competencies, and we are sending our talent to work there and bringing in their talent to work with us. So we are trying to retain that competency within our organization and to a much wider aspect of the level of people. And I'm sure many other organizations are doing very similar things. We are also doing something which, let's say, the young Generation Z is very much tech oriented. So while they have got certain skill sets, but they have global aspirations, they have larger aspirations. So we are using that group of employees to partner with these the employees force we have outside India and learn from them, and so that their aspirations are met. They are working on very high-tech projects because that gives them high, and that is how we are trying to manage the entire competency upgradation or upskilling, as we call it, within the organization. So we are also looking at because the cultural aspect, I would not want to miss that aspect. Upskilling is very important, but when you become global, how do you handle the cultural aspect also? Because that is very, very important. Primarily, we are an Indian organization. So that again is a very, very important aspect which HR leads. How do you integrate the culture along with the skills and competencies? So that also is another agenda we drive, and it's not easy because you're dealing with different cultures across the globe. So while there is no imposition, but of course the basic values and that parity is being brought about. And I'm sure we are I'm not saying we are doing a very great job, but we are on the path. We are also learning as we move forward. And we're trying to integrate both culture and the competency-based skills across the organization. And there's every day is a new day. We learn everything. Something happens in Germany, something happens in Spain. So we pick up things from there. And HR is leading this right at the front.
Right. Kavita, I want to come to you, as Rajiv mentioned about attracting global talent if there is a crunch here in India. But what about getting some of the talent, if you're taking talent from the rest of the world and upskilling them or reskilling them for larger roles? Are companies investing enough so that the long-term career goals of these young professionals are being met?
Okay, I don't think it's, irrespective of the location, we would go all out to ensure we have an academy that is able to provide us with the skill training that is needed. I don't think location, Nasrin, is so much of an impediment to us auto organizations. Whoever is able to provide us with that knowledge, information, we will kind of just grab that person with both arms. I remember there was an academy, RWTCH, that was signed up by Sumeet, one of our competitors. And the moment that kind of came up, all of us galloped ahead and said, okay, if this OEM has, if this tier one supplier has signed up with this vendor, then I'm sure, you know, the initial screening has already been done. So let's just go ahead and ride the bandwagon. So there aren't too many, Nasrin, whether it's India or whether it's global. But just to add on, going back to what Sumeet was speaking of, try and capture the aspiration of the individual also, that is going to be beneficial. So if you have your talent tracker, if you have the horoscope of the individual, his skills, and then you also capture the aspiration, aspiration can again be met provided the organization is growing. If the organization stands still, it's a little tad difficult to say, okay, this is your aspiration and here I have kind of met it. You can't really meet it if you're not growing. Anyway, but these kind of you know, tools definitely help also in sending nudges to employees as and when there are open IGP positions. So you have the information of the employee, and then there is an internal posting that is placed saying this is the skill that we are looking for, and if there's anyone you know, available internally, you can apply. But not everyone will read that particular mail. So a tool that nudges employees to say, this is an IGP that is open and why don't you apply, and you know, the fitment is correct, just like we say in LMS or an LXP, which says this is your skill competency. If you have to improve to the next competency, there's a nudge that actually comes and pushes you to say, okay, this is split into 10 hours, but you can take 1 hour modules over the next few days. So tools, workforce management systems, definitely the need of the hour.
Okay, so let's also now try and take some questions. There are quite a few questions coming in. So there are some questions which between Nasrin and I, we've identified. So let's try and get those questions going as well. So the first one that we picked, and we'll try and get some more, is from Dr. Zakir. And the question goes, let me read it out. What is the most pressing issue in keeping digital factories safe from the workforce? Safe, you know, they want, or Dr. Zakir's question is about keeping it safe, and how are they a critical asset in the ecosystem? If I can request for short answers from Sudeep as well as Sumeet. So Sudipta, if you can go first.
Okay, so I think Dr. Zakir is a very good. I'll attempt very short in what we are trying to do is, you know, we actually have tried something. You know, I don't know if it's foolproof as yet, because the results are encouraging. Is that the environment actually has to reimagine. So we adopted a Japanese methodology called dojo, but dojo rooms, as it's known, it's very popular. It's usually physical, but what we have done it is we have tried to recreate the whole thing in a VR and AR environment, so that you have a lot of simulation and exposure to kind of technology to the shop floors, which is designed around Industry 4.0. So that, you know, you can simulate and also anticipate a lot of things which can happen because of negligence, because of failures and things like that, rather than a technology failure. So these are the experiments which maybe work, because if your technology, if your shop floor is much more technologically advanced and reimagined, maybe the initial training. So the dojo room is exposed to all kind of workmen, trainees in the beginning. They have to spend a mandatory kind of a digital experience, training, exposure, quiz through our AR, VR environment before even they hit the shop floor. So this is one of the things which we have tried.
Okay, Sumeet, would you like to attempt an answer to that?
Sure. So I think very, very interesting to hear what Sudipta mentioned. I think it's probably a little bit in the realm of the metaverse, maybe the way the world is going, right? So and I think again, it's the use of technology to try and make places safer. And I think it's the other industries that need to learn from manufacturing in terms of how to keep workplace safe. That's how I see it, because safety was always paramount importance for a manufacturer. It of course came into the fore. The whole Maslow's hierarchy kind of turned upside down because of the COVID pandemic, where safety became number one again. But the fact is, I think some of the traditional tried and tested methodologies that manufacturers have perfected, to me, I mean, that those are applied in in non-manufacturing organizations today, right? So that's there. There is a lot of interesting innovative work that is happening, as Sudipta already mentioned, around how tech can be used to manage employees better. I think purely from the perspective of how people organizations manage employees better during the pandemic, a lot of initiatives were taken, right from getting an employee from home to taking him back home, right? If you would want to call it a home to home. A lot of initiatives were taken to make the entire experience safe. It's end of day, it really boils down to whether the employee feels that he is in safe hands. So I think some of the work that all you HR leaders did was exceptional. And yeah, I mean, I think kudos to that. I don't have many more things to say on that. So, but I think it's amazing.
Okay, let me take the next question. We have got a pile of them. I don't think time will permit us to take all the questions, but just one that we have pulled up. This is from Aditya, and this I'm opening it to anybody who wants to take this question. During your meets with the business leadership of your respective organization, what are some of the key areas which the business leadership wants HR leadership to focus on? Is there any change you see in the focus areas between pre-pandemic and current era? Whoever wants, it's open now. Whoever wants to take it.
I'll go first on this. Sure. Interesting question. And yes, there is a change. And the crux of what all we have been discussing, I think the ask from HR currently is to make the organization, from a talent perspective, future-proof. So that is what's happening. We are all fishing in the same water, and we've had talks, Kavita and we have had several discussions on this for talent. So that is something which is on everybody's mind. One is to grow your internal talent, which means keep them engaged, upskill them, and keep them relevant so that they are in the organization, as well as fish for fresh talent to fill in the competencies which are missing. So these are the two key asks which are there in every business meet. And like many other organizations, Kavita also mentioned, the talent strategies have been rewritten, the EVPs have been rewritten, and the focus of the top leadership, not just HR, is purely on talent. If I can add here, about 60% to 70% time of the top leadership goes in talking about talent, people, getting the right people in the organization. That's the key agenda for HR right now.
Yeah, I think I would like to add and completely endorse what Rajiv said. The only addition I would say is the ask from my leadership is talent, but the talent which appreciates and understands and assimilates technology, because that is one of the the manufacturing and the technology is no more divorced. So appreciation of technology, and that's the kind of talent, and creating that environment. If you really have to attract those kind of talent, first the HR team has to be very technology enabled. They have to appreciate technology. They have to understand technology. So I think that is one of the thing which is, and the other thing which it's not mentioned so directly, but I tried to pull it out myself is, this whole concept of job description, which is, I have a box and I'll get someone who meets some of these things and make the box, to a movement that, hey, this is a talent. Can you craft a job? Can you craft a job for him? And can you craft an organization around those job crafting? Is the kind of expectation with the leadership has. Because as Jim Collins says, first you get the right people on the bus. So you should not miss out on the right people because your box does not support it.
Yeah.
So I think these are the two things which I have implicitly or explicitly faced.
Right. Yes, Rajiv.
Sorry,
Rajiv, you need to unmute yourself, Rajiv.
Sorry. So while there is a definite need to onboard the right talent, another ask which is very important is creating an ecosystem around it. You cannot be a traditional organization and expect the best of the talent, the technical talent, to stay with you. So the entire ecosystem, or the creation of that ecosystem which accepts and nurtures this kind of talent, is very, very important. That's again a big ask. It's not just cultural change I'm talking about. It is the entire ecosystem. how do you handle this kind of a talent in the organization? So let's say we are a traditional organization, so we are also trying to find ways to become or create an ecosystem where we can nurture and accept and grow this kind of a talent in the organization. So that's another ask which is right at the desk of HR.
Okay, let's take one last question from the audience. And this is a question that has come from Anna Arivan Kandaya. I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Anna. And Anna's questions are two, so I'll probably toss it to two different people. The first question goes, in an organization, how to change the employee's mindset from a mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset? Sumeet, this is skilling at a different level.
Yeah, so I think it's to me the defining characteristic of an entrepreneur is lack of fear to fail, right? That to me is the defining characteristic. So how can you build a culture where you are okay with failure when you try? I think to me is what really drives a more entrepreneurial mindset. If you look at examples of some of the great companies that we've all read about, I think almost exclusively one of the things that comes out in all of them is how the company allowed their employees to spend their time to do few things at the cost of probably failing. So yeah, I mean, how can it be done for every single employee with every single category? There are a lot of nuances to it, and I don't think we have the time to discuss that. Sure. But to me, I'd like to say that it's really about building this culture.
Okay, the second part of the question, I'll toss it to Ruchika. And the question reads this way: particularly in auto industry, there is a revolution happening in the mobility solutions such as EV, fuel cell vehicles, next phase of urban air mobility, and much more yet to come. How to groom people's premium mindset? That's the term used by Anna Arivan. Ruchika.
Interestingly, as I'm reading the question, how to groom up people's premium
mindset.
It's got a two-way approach to it. One is that, of course, EVs are more costly, and everything related to it is costly, whether it's electric vehicles or it's related to all the other things which are coming with mobility are costly. So I'm not sure if I can respond to it from an HR perspective, but I think it will be more to say that we can just hope that a government looks at, subsidizing it and making it more affordable to people to be able to, not to be able to afford it and yet contribute well to the sustainability of our planet. But the premiumness side will continue till it will stay as expensive as it is. And I'm not sure how better to answer that question.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Can I just add to the first part of the question?
Sure.
Sumeet answered it very well. Just wanted to add, how do you convert a mindset of an employee to a ownership or an entrepreneur mindset? I think one key aspect is the organization's ability or the appetite for accepting failure. That is very, very important, because if the employee understands that even if I try, I as an entrepreneur, I'm getting into this aspect. Even if I fail, I'm not going to be punished. The organization accepts it, and I will be given another opportunity to do something different. I think that spurs innovation, and this brings that mindset of having an entrepreneur mindset from just an employee's mindset. I think that is something very important we must understand.
Maybe if I flip it slightly the other way around, for me, an entrepreneur mindset is also a growth mindset, also a mindset which is with ownership and accountability.
Yes.
Many times that's a big gap in our people. Say, I had an earlier CEO who said, run the business as if it's your own. Then the cost is something you are more conscious of. Growth is something which is your key driver, irrespective of whichever function you are, and you are accountable for each of your action because of the fact that you own it in completeness. So I feel for me, while we do give a lot of leeway to people to allow them to fail, sometimes they are themselves very resistant and hesitant to innovate in the process of being, if I can say it in Hindi, chalta hai attitude. This is how it's always been. I hear a this phrase very commonly in many organizations, but this is how it's always been. Why fix it when it's not broken? I think that's what you need to change. So I feel for me, entrepreneurship is more about having the right growth mindset, innovation, creativity, and most importantly, ownership and accountability.
Right.
Ruchika, that's good.
So now let's talk about the road ahead, because it is the multiplier of technology and talent, which is actually going to run the or take the sector ahead. So if I have to put this question to both Rajiv and Sudipta, what do you think is the road ahead for the industry as it looks to a newer future? There are newer mobility formats being created. And of course, the industry will need new skills, new talent to kind of cater and build something which will kind of be prepared for the future. So how do you think productivity and reskilling of any organization will help this talent to nurture, and how do leaders need to think different with organization-wide reskilling?
Sudipta, you go first.
Okay. I think Nasrin is very related to one of the questions which was there in the box, which is the premium mindset. This is actually because the industry and the products are taking a turn. And I'll give you some statistics. There are a lot of premium vehicles loaded with technology, EVs, with the luxury EVs launched in India, upwards of 1 crore on-road price. And there, if you want to buy that, you have to wait for 6 to 8 months. So the industry is getting refined. It's completely redefined. It's something like, I'll give an analogy in a phone, which when the people are comfortable buying an Apple phone more than 1 lakh rupees, so the price point and the product has changed. So what many people say, it is now a computer on wheels. It's not actually a gearbox and engine on wheels kind of thing. So the thing is the kind of talent, the kind of talent which we need to, if you may borrow also, you want to groom also, you want to hire also, is going to be very, very premium. So the kind of ecosystem, and I will borrow words from Rajiv as well before Rajiv comes in, the whole ecosystem of culture, processes, systems, career paths. It may not be a very long career path, because we have to be very comfortable with that. The definitions of organization loyalty may even change, and the kind of the mix of performance and mix of education. Because you have to constantly unlearn, and we have to support that kind of learning for our employees, because otherwise, there is a two kind of challenge that I train them, I really overtrain them, get into the technologies, and they may have an attrition. But remember, if you don't train them, and and they stay back with you, they may not be able to produce the kind of premium things which one of our people in the audience was on. So basically, it needs a complete redefinition the way we are looking at the employees in the future. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So thanks, Sudipta. So I would just add another aspect. So while it is very challenging road ahead, definitely, but it's very exciting also. And if you look at the recent amendments of the labor codes which have come in, the recognition of this type of employment is very heartening to see that it has found its way there also. So if you look at the model standing orders, the codes which have come in, they recognize the gig workforce, they recognize the shared, the borrowed workforce. All these things have been clearly mentioned there. So hats off to the ministry for doing all these things, and we are just waiting for that to unfold now. So the law is there supporting it, and I think we are all gearing up to revamp our talent strategies, as well as, I'll just quote an example from our organization. Yes, reskilling of technical people is very, very important. They have to be kept relevant. But we are also looking at our workforce. We are identifying people from the shop floor who have the ability or the learning agility to learn the technical aspects of work. We are training them. We have a group of people who are getting trained, and they will transition into staff category. So every year we move people from workforce to staff. So that's a growth happening. The people look forward to new learnings, upskilling, because upskilling should not just mean that they are doing a better job on the same line. So they are moving ahead in life. Their aspirations are getting met. They are moving to better jobs. So I think it's a very exciting time we're looking at, and more of these things are going to be coming into our on our table, and we'll be looking at that.
Right. I think we are just almost there at the 90-minute mark, Ashu. Should we take another question, or it's time for the closing remarks?
I think we should look to wind up. So Nasrin, how about summing up the discussion?
Right. Indeed, it's been a very fruitful conversation, and a lot of deep dive insights into a sector which has definitely evolved much from the complexities that the pandemic had brought in. And I think it is critical for organizations to relook at reskilling for their organizations. Well, all our panelists definitely agreed on the reskilling of the organizations, or the different talent management. Managing the frontline workers can keep the regular business going, and planning for the workforce of the future, and accordingly engaging with them is definitely very, very critical, as all of our panelists have agreed upon it, that how to retain the talent is also a question after you reskill or upskill them for the future. And I think because we have our panelists representing the auto ancillary companies, and I think what we have discussed is India's auto ancillary companies are now looking at a global opportunity. Could the industry do the magic? It is possible if the right talent is available for them, isn't it, Ashu?
Absolutely, because look at the kind of companies. I mean, just to give an example, and it comes to mind right at the top of the mind, a company like JCB exports to 100 countries, and it is the biggest market or the biggest production center for JCB, the UK company. So that's just one example, and you have several of those ancillary companies working with the large two-wheeler and four-wheeler companies for the opportunity. But for the organization-wide change to happen and to drive the future of the auto ancillary industry, companies will need to have a long-term plan with the right talent, with the engagement, so that productivity can be enhanced. So just about enough time for us to wrap up. Sumeet, if I can toss to you for a note of thanks as well.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Kavita, Sudipta, Rajiv, and Ruchika for joining this panel. I think it's been amazing hearing all of you and your thoughts. I mean, if you look at manufacturing, auto itself, right? I was seeing auto in India is about auto and auto ancillary, for that matter, is about 49% of the manufacturing GDP, and the fact is, India is poised to be a manufacturing powerhouse in the next 10, 15 years. I hope we get there, but I'm pretty sure we will. So, so clearly auto is going to play such a big role in taking India to where it will be from this Atmanirbhar thing that we are doing, that we all want to do, right? So, and you are the custodians of, all of you are the custodians of taking India there. No pressure, right? But the journey that I can see that all of you from auto and auto ancillary that you're probably going to take from here over the next 10 years is just going to be mind-boggling, in the positive side, not on the negative side. I think Sudipta, in a call yesterday, you mentioned that there are a lot of tailwinds to this industry, right? There are always headwinds, but there are tailwinds, and those tailwinds is what we need to ride. So I think workforce end of day will play a very big key role in how we scale to the next level of growth. So and we as UKG, as technology providers to an industry like you, hope to continue partnering and making it better and better for you. So thank you once again for taking the time out, all of you. Really thank you from the bottom of my heart to be part of this panel. Thank you, Ashutosh, for giving me and UKG the opportunity, of course, and Nasrin as well.
Thank you so much, Sumeet. Just as I wrap up, I had one specific question to Sudipta, since he mentioned the 5 generation of employees in the organization. I hope you were the youngest among them.
I really don't know. I mean, sometimes the visual impression in a digital platform is deceptive.
I can understand.
Come over to Pune and you can meet us face to face.
Thank you so much for everyone for being with us on this conversation. Thank you indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a good evening.